afternoon. My name is Kevin Schmiegel. I'm the Executive Director of Hiring Our Heroes at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I'm a 20-year Marine veteran. For veterans on the Hangout with us today, you are joining us for a panel about an exciting new initiative in the energy industry focused on hiring veterans called Troops to Energy. And today we're joined by representatives from two companies that have great hiring programs for veterans in their own right, PG&E and Dominion. But before we introduce our two panelists, I'd like to tell you a little bit about VetNet and this exciting new online career resource center that we've built with Google. VetNet is technology-based. It's an effort to help veterans, transitioning service members, and their families, to include military spouses, find meaningful employment. It was created in collaboration with Syracuse University and their Institute for Veterans and Military Families, as well as a small nonprofit called Hire Heroes USA, which is an Atlanta-based organization. I like to think of it as an online career resource center where we can host panels, question and answer periods, and workshops. The best thing about it is it's free and open to everyone, and the material falls into three categories. So no matter where you are in your employment cycle, no matter what career options you're considering, the tools will be out there for you to use 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a basic training track that covers resume writing, interview techniques, how to network, how to land a government job, those things that you may or may not be getting through some of the government services that are provided to you in the Department of Defense or the VA or the Department of Labor. Really a private sector approach to those basic things that you need as you're transitioning to the private sector. Then there's an entrepreneur track on how to start a business that's being run by the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And of course, our own Career Connections track, which you're part of today. Again, we're trying to really focus on individual industries that are interested in hiring veterans, and where possible, to get veterans from those companies who have made it successfully from the military and now are with those companies to join us. And today we did just that. We have two veterans joining us. To my left on your screen is Dave Roberts. Dave is the lead recruiter for gas operations at Pacific Gas and Electric, commonly referred to as PG&E. Dave is a 23-year Navy veteran, and he's currently serving in the reserves at Navy Operations Support Center in Alameda. Dave has 10 years of active duty, and 8 of those years were served as an enlisted Naval Reserve recruiter and manager, so he knows a little bit about the challenges that younger people have when they leave the service, just from his own relationship as a recruiter, bringing people in. Dave was commissioned in 2008 as a supply officer in the Navy, and he's now in 03. We also have Matt. Matt Kellum is joining us from Dominion, where he started in February of 2008. He is on the staffing team as a senior HR specialist, so we'll have someone very qualified to talk about some of the things that they're doing. Dave is also a veteran. He has 15 years of staffing experience, and now he served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. So I want to welcome you both here today. Dave and Matt, the best way to start this is to give you guys an opportunity to do kind of an overview of your own programs within your companies. And I want to start with Dave from PG&E and ask you to kick us off here, Dave.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Pacific Gas and Electric was incorporated in California in 1905, and we're one of the largest combination natural gas and electric utilities in the United States. We're based here in San Francisco, and we are a subsidiary of Pacific Gas and Electric Corporation. We have approximately about 20,000 employees who carry out our day-to-day businesses, and we provide electric and natural gas to about 15 million people throughout a 70,000 square mile service area in Northern and Central California. We really strive to provide an environment where our employees are enriched by being here and able to do their very best work. We do this by creating an inclusive culture and diverse workforce, very transparent. We really want one that reflects diversity to our customers and meets our needs of communities that we serve, who we build strong and diverse, relationships with. Throughout our efforts in 2012, we filled 211 vacancies with veterans, 146 of those which were external hires, which equated to about 6.9% of our external hires. So far in 2013, we've hired about 14 veterans, which is about 5.4% of our external hires. And keep in mind that really represents those who self-selected to provide this information. Right now, we have many different programs that we're working on. We have our Power Pathway program, which is a nationally recognized collaborative workforce development model. And we work with this program through community colleges, universities, public workforce development systems, labor, veterans organizations, and other industry-related organizations. And the goal of this program is really to create and train and produce skills qualified and diverse workers needed for the PG&E and the energy utility industry. It really enlarges our talent pool of qualified, diverse candidates. You know, some of our workforce strategy for veterans is really to become an employer of choice for military veterans to increase brand recognition in the military community and increase our employee engagement. You know, our goal is to over the year increase our new hires by about 10%. You know, be in the top 50 of the most military-friendly companies, and we come to find that veterans have a 5% less attrition rate than the average attrition rate. Our objective really is to expand our veterans-focused entry level and to bridge our utility workers program. And we're really developing a specialty to bridge our programs through MOS crosswalks. So really trying to take those MOSs and see how they convert to specific jobs within PG&E. Some of our initiatives this year is to bridge our utility worker program, get the welding certificate program going, have our MOS and education translation workshops. We really we need to do these to fill some of our critical jobs.
That's really great, Dave. Hey, Matt, why don't you join in?
Yeah.
Try to tell us a little bit about what Dominion's doing. I know both of you have really dedicated CEOs on the issue of veterans employment. And then, lastly, why don't you tie in what you're both doing together as part of your industry as a whole after you give an overview of Dominion?
Sure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity today. Yeah, Dominion has always been a military-friendly company. I think, like David was saying, we're over 100 years old as a company, and you know, always military-friendly. Actually, any military aligns quite well with with the type of work that we do on the civilian side. So it's just a make sense type of match for us as an industry to look at veterans. Back in 2009, we actually dedicated a formal military resource, or a relationship coordinator, as we refer to it. And basically what that allowed us to do is really focus on things that we were already doing well, some of our best practices from a recruitment and outreach effort. We've always been very proud of and have had very good benefits, once we hire the veteran. But dedicating that resource a few years back just let us enhance our activity. And I'll say, I guess it was April of 2011 when we had an opportunity to partner with PG&E and 4 other companies to work on this Troops to Energy Jobs initiative. And really what that initiative showed us was that we were already doing very good things, but while we tried a few new things as far as the recruitment and outreach, what we realized is we didn't really need to deviate from our current processes, but rather let the program and all of the purpose behind it and some of the things that David alluded to, let it enhance our existing efforts. And some things I want to point out is just statistically, Dominion as a company, we're in the top 200 Fortune 500 companies, so we're very proud of that. Some of our core values are safety, excellence, One Dominion, and ethics. You know, so those things are not much different than what a lot of us find in the military. I mean, we might say a different word or call it a different thing, but basically our core values also align quite well. And and if it weren't for those core values, we wouldn't be as productive as a company. I'm also proud to say, and I think David alluded to them, PG&E as well being recognized. We were able to very proudly crack the top 50 in GI Jobs magazine, top 100 military-friendly companies, and that's been a lot of work. And I know I can appreciate all that our partners PG&E have to put into it, and I really believe it's the Troop Synergy Jobs program that and the enhancements to what we do day in and day out that help us get there. So with that, I'll actually throw out also in 2011 and 2012, we hired veterans externally at about 11 to 12% clip. And what we saw in 2012, just by enhancing, creating awareness, doing a little more advertising, we saw that percentage of external hires being veterans increase to 21%. So we saw a huge jump. Now, the challenge will be to maintain that percentage or to see that kind of jump, which I don't think we will, but if we can hire 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 veterans externally, I think that's a great thing. And where I think PG&E has some excellent programs from what I've learned, they have some educational pathways where they can fit in their veteran recruitment, and that'll really work well for them, and I'm sure many other things. And that's actually where we have some room to grow, is to have a clear-cut educational pathway for those veterans who won't fall in immediately. And I guess that's some of what we can talk about today, among other things. But that's really been the benefit of the Troop Synergy Jobs program, because it brought together 6 of us energy companies, and it really let us put our heads together to figure out and be able to articulate not only to other companies but also to veterans what are the career pathways and the educational pathways to get into our industry, and then let's also create better awareness about our industry and our respective companies. And I think the website is up now, and that's ideally what the intent of the program is to make it easier for the veterans.
That's really great. I appreciate you giving us an overview. I'd like to tie this to a program that that we've started to talk to some of the younger veterans in particular about, and even transitioning service members at this point. We are building a technology called Fast Track, and what I think is really important for a lot of our transitioning service members and post 9/11 veterans to understand is there is a critical need in a lot of industries out there for skilled workers. President Obama himself last year in a State of the Union address that said there are 2 million jobs that are going unfilled right now because we lack a trained workforce. That's actually grown to about 3.5 to 4 million. That's a significant skills gap in America. As I left the Marine Corps, I was in charge of enlisted assignments and retention, and I talked to young people about their transition, because we had 4 Marines leave after their first 4 years. And what we found is they're making a decision of the heart when they go back to their hometowns or their wives' hometowns. And instead of thinking about their education and employment opportunities in terms of what's needed in America, they're just going back to in some cases, rural areas where there's high unemployment. So if you look at our map, our Fast Track program, we want to highlight industries like your own who are hiring. I talk to folks in Southern, I talk to folks in a lot of the other companies that are part of this initiative, and you guys have thousands and thousands of jobs coming open because of the aging workforce. Yeah. These are good paying jobs, and what we want people to do is to drill down on our map. We want every major industry that's growing to be represented, and go to a place where there are job opportunities, where if you look at your industry in some of the major cities where you're hiring, there are probably hundreds of jobs that could be filled if veterans just consider moving to those locations and going down these career paths. Right. We want them to use their GI Bill to get a credential, to get a certification, to join an apprenticeship program, and then on the nights and weekends go to school, get their bachelor's degree, and work their way up the corporate ladder. I think this is a difference in approach. I think it's revolutionary, and I think as we build out this map, we'll be looking more and more for programs like Troops to Energy to become involved with it, because at the end of the day, when kids are leaving the military and they're looking for someone to help them with jobs and they're looking for a business representative, they think of the chamber. They don't think of a lot of the other single trade industries that are out there doing this. So we're going to be working with Troops to Energy, we're working with Get Skills to Work, and we're working with other industries to build out these tracks, because if you look at manufacturing, if you look at energy, if you look at healthcare, if you look at information technology, if you look at infrastructure, if you look at transportation, hundreds of thousands of jobs are available. And we don't want a grunt to think that all he can do is security. He should be open up to these opportunities. I don't know what you guys think about that. Anyone? Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I'll just throw out there, one of the benefits that the Troops Energy Jobs program offers is, if you go to our website, there is actually an ability to connect with a virtual career coach. And this individual is someone who has not only a long career, retired military, a long career in the industry itself, but also an educational background. And we were just talking about that topic on Friday, is that, you know, I'm a Marine vet myself, and a grunt from the Marine Corps doesn't have to just go into security. You know, if he's looking to separate and he knows he's going to get out at a certain point and has some advance notice, if we can make the educational pathways a little more visible to that individual, then they can go ahead and start pursuing some of the college courses or the certificates that might make them a better qualified candidate for our entry-level positions, or maybe something a little more junior level. And then to your point that you made earlier, our entry-level positions actually pay quite well, and that's just to get your foot in the door. So,
listen, I agree. I have a real problem with trying to fit a square peg in a square hole from people leaving the military, even with people that have a specific skill. I looked at some of the sites that that are out there in the National Resource Directory. I looked at job search engines across the private sector space and nonprofit space, and the problem is most of them are MOS based. And I did a search on a couple of these sites as a 0311, and I plugged in a city like Columbus, and in some cases you get a 0 search result. I mean, we're telling an infantry squad leader who's coming back from Afghanistan, who's managed and led 12 people in combat, who's been accountable for millions of dollars of equipment, who, you know, helped rebuild schools. We're telling him that he has a 0 search result in Columbus, Ohio. You look at other sites and they get security guard opportunities, or they're told they can go back in the Guard and Reserve. This is not what our country is about. Our country is about opening up opportunities in industries that need them. And then I look at truck drivers. I mean, has anyone thought for a second that giving a truck driver a CDL is not the answer to our problems? Did anyone ever consider that a truck driver may not want to drive anymore? I mean, there are 40,000 drivers leaving the military every year, and there's a shortage of 200,000 drivers in the United States. If we could solve the problem overnight by giving everyone CDLs, that would be great. But the fact is, a lot of those 40,000 men and women did not want to go in the military to drive a truck anyway. The recruiter pushed them into that MOS.
Right.
So again, this is not about square peg in square hole. This is about telling the 1 million service members that are getting ready to leave over the next 5 years that there are millions of jobs that they should consider in cities that are growing and not declining in terms of job growth. Wait, you got any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, you know, I agree. Some of the initiatives out there, as well as some of the websites, is on helping a lot of these transitioning military members with their resumes. It's not just the education and what they've learned in the military, but they have a lot of different skills other than the MOS of being a truck driver or an 0311 or being a bosun's mate in the Navy. So there are what needs to happen really that I see is they need to cultivate their skills that they have and be able to tailor them towards the specific job that they're applying for. I've noticed that a lot of the websites that help a lot of the military members transition their experience into civilian terminology just isn't effective. And so when I go out to these TAP classes and speak to specific military members to really try to help them and develop them on creating a resume that speaks to recruiters in all organizations. When you have a lot of recruiters that are out there now that have never been in the military, they're unable to really look at the experience and see how it can be translated to one of the particular jobs that they may have available. So, I'd like to, on the military side, I'm hoping that there will be more outreach for the TAP classes and other government agencies to really focus on helping these separating military members be able to develop their resumes. And some of the best things that I can recommend is, when you have a skill set, it may not be, orange to orange. It might be tangerine to orange, to where the development is, weeks to a couple of months to actually be, 100% in that job. And that's kind of the stuff that we want to look at.
That's great, Dave. I got to jump in on this and talk about it. I get really passionate about this topic on translating military skills and resume writing. I've been to dozens of hiring fairs, and post 9/11 veterans, and particularly younger veterans, fall woefully short. They do a horrible job on resumes, but it goes back to the point about this MOS and the TAP process. The Transition Assistance Program is pushing people to focus on just their MOS. So I got tired of it. I'm running a program that has this national in scope, that has the buy-in and support of 35 major companies across America, representing 25 million jobs. We basically took a look at it and said, we need to build a resume tool. We need to help them develop their elevator pitch. We need to help them understand that they have a personal brand, that they can tell a compelling story. So we just went out and with the support of Dakota Meyer, who's one of the country's youngest living Medal of Honor recipient, the first to receive the Medal of Honor in 38 years, living Marine to receive it in 38 years. And we've got the support of the Toyota Motor Company, and we're building, it's on the screen now, a resume engine. And what's unique about this is it's a TurboTax technology that allows people, and this will be rolled out here in March at one of our hiring fairs, and we've been beta testing it with younger veterans. TurboTax technology, drop-down menus, but not just your MOS, your awards, your schools, your deployments, your leadership billets. And we tested this with HR managers and looked for the keywords. It is absolutely ridiculous that all these technologies are out there and no one around is talking about the whole of service. They just get pigeonholed into their MOS. It's about time that someone built a tool like this. And listen, if it's good, people will use it. And we won't need to worry about whether or not service members are getting it before they leave. And we can also take care of the veterans who have recently transitioned or have been looking for employment for a long time. I've seen the technology. I've seen younger veterans test it, and I feel that it's different and that it's compelling. So when we roll this out, we're going to help people think of their service holistically and not just as, this is my MOS, this is what I did, because I think that is the biggest part of the problem, is them translating their skills, developing a personal brand that talks about everything, and going to where the jobs are in the industries that are hiring. If we can do those two things with this resume engine and with the fast track map, we are approaching the problem from a whole new standpoint, and it's going to change the lives of hundreds of thousands of people potentially. So we are going to a question, which is great that we have a question out there from a transitioning service member named Tim. He's a prior nuke electrician on submarines, okay? He's applied to system operator and systems dispatcher jobs for PG&E, and he's currently living in Columbus. It's funny I used Columbus as an example. I didn't mean to do that, Tim. Anyway, he's on terminal leave, and he asked if a candidate's location has any influence on the process, the hiring process, relocation cost, etc. I guess that question is directed at you, Dave. But certainly, Matt, if you want to chime in. I was on one of these panels. This is the second energy panel that we did. And Southern Company actually told a nuclear electrician just to send his resume and they would hire him as long as he met all the other qualifications. I assume that would be a skill set that you're looking for.
Well, we always look for people in the nuclear field. To answer your question, just because you're out of state does not hinder the ability of employment with PG&E. We do offer relocation packages, most definitely. You know, we are matching this as much skill sets as we can to the particular position, and we get thousands of applicants and resumes, especially for some of those you know, dispatcher jobs. But in whole, you know, before as a company, we would definitely look in our regions, and you know, really since 2010, we've been outreaching across the United States, and at times even to other countries as well, for those expatriates, or for those military members that are stationed overseas and are actually applying while they're you know, on active duty currently. So most definitely, we are looking for people across the United States.
That's great. And since I went to you, Dave, now we'll put Matt on the spot. We got another question in right away from Daniel. First, he wants to know if is there a limiting factor of veteran hiring for energy jobs related to the number of applicants and the qualification of those applicants, or both? Do you guys, I mean, in my personal opinion, if an energy has huge demand and they have a population like veterans that has, in most part, if they're transitioning, a relocation allowance and the GI Bill, that there are things that you can do creatively to attract that talent. But is there a way you can address that question, what the limiting factors are? Or maybe it's not limiting, maybe that increases their opportunities if they are veterans.
Yeah, I think there's a few things to consider here. Yes, when you look at the numbers of jobs that we anticipate in our industry coming open due to the aging workforce, and then you look at the numbers of veterans that are getting out, I think number one, it's an awareness thing. I guess if you were to rewind 5 years or 10, 15 years for any of us, would we have thought about the energy industry as a career? And those of us who weren't already in it, we might have said, oh no, I didn't think about that. So I think awareness is a big thing. And then I think, again, there are a couple different types of veterans from the employer's perspective. There are those who are ready now, like you take the folks who are in the Navy nuclear program, no matter what their specialty is. Those are folks that we would certainly hire now, as long as, you know, the application process was followed and they met all the other criteria for each specific job. But then there are other veterans who maybe aren't ready now. They have all the core values. They have all the work ethic, the safety, all those things, the leadership. They've managed budgets. They've managed small teams. But there's still a technical basic qualification that needs to be met for a lot of our jobs in our industry, and that's where the educational pathways come in. So I think, to answer the question, yeah, we could see an influx of veterans who may be all applying for the same types of jobs, and some of them might be missing some technical basic qualification that's just simply required by a company in our industry or by the industry in general. So I hope that answers that part of the question. I think the awareness is the biggest thing, and I think that's why an event like today, this hangout, is great, because maybe there are veterans or family members that see this, or even children that see this, that might say, oh, I never thought about that, and then they might start to look into it more and educate themselves.
You want to jump in, Dave? I think that it's pretty clear that there are opportunities out there. I mean, one of my frustration points is I know there are hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in your companies and companies like yours that are going unfilled because of a lack of a trained workforce. Anything that you could add to that?
Well, I don't see any limiting factors. You know, as long as the applicants, when they are applying for particular jobs, that they are meeting the minimum qualifications that are asked. That's where a lot of veterans need to really look at their skill set and make sure that that's a particular job that they are in fact qualified for. I'd like to go on part with you know, with anybody who has you know, like Matt says, background in nuclear, any of these specific skill set would be desired by any energy company, especially with an electric and nuclear background. So we aim to hire in 2013 as many veterans as we can.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in real quick. I think there's questions from everyone all the time, especially U.S. Chamber, for example. What's your goal? How many are you going to hire in 2013? Or year by year we get that question, and I think it's tough for any industry really to predict. At least it is for us sometimes to predict an actual number. We're in a pretty unique industry where there's a lot of factors that impact our ability to hire externally. The thing that I can say very comfortably and proudly is that we are an industry that, even if we only focused on our critical job needs and skill sets, that's a lot of jobs in itself. So it may look like any one company is not hiring as much as it was this year compared to 2 years ago, but if you just look at the critical jobs alone, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. What I'll say as far as Dominion is we focus more on the percentage. Since we can't control some of those factors and what impacts our industry, we actually look at the percentage, and I think that that's a better way to look at it, because then what we start to look at down the road is the percentage of retention, because it's not just a matter of hiring the good veterans and helping them prepare to get our jobs, but it's also a matter of retaining them. And at some point, yes, the metrics to hire them becomes pretty important, but then the more important metric is retaining them, because all of us veterans like stability, and so we want a place that we can go for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever we have left in our career.
That's great. Daniel, I know you're out there listening. We answered 2 of your 3 questions. You had a question on sequestration. How about you give us a few days to answer your questions about how it affects this industry, but maybe the private sector as a whole. Will get you some info on that. I think sequestration is a concern of a lot of people here in Washington, where I work, from the federal government perspective, but it does affect a lot of companies who do work with the Department of Defense and some of the other agencies. So it's a great question, but I'd like to get back to that one to you. We'll post it on VetNet, on the Career Connections track, and if you have further follow-ups, we'll do that. We did get a 3rd question, so we're on a roll. We don't see this all the time, so I want to keep on fielding those questions. We've had this once before in a panel too, and to me it's unbelievable that this happens, but we get a question from Simone asking for advice that you can offer to veterans who meet the minimum qualifications but are told they are overqualified for positions. Don't know if you guys have heard or used those code words before, but it would be an interesting perspective to lend to Simone on what exactly that means and how she should approach the problem with HR managers in general. If you do have any advice, doesn't matter who answers, just don't leave the airtime blank. Otherwise, I'm going to have to make up an answer.
No, well, I'll jump in, because this is a tricky one. And I'm actually in a supervisory role now, and so I think what happens is there's a lot, and not just our industry, but there's a lot of times when a supervisor or manager gets approval to fill a job. Well, if it took a lot to get that approval, and if they got to make sure they take advantage of the opportunity they have, they're probably going to seek out the best qualified candidate that they possibly can. And now we're talking about a job that might require some unique skills, not an entry-level position. And in that case, they may be looking for a niche person. So I think in that situation, what's important, and Kevin, I think you mentioned this before, is we have an opportunity to teach the veterans how to market not only their skills a little bit better, but also their interests, and as well as the hiring managers. Because I look at myself. If I'd have stayed in the military, I'd be 18 years in. I'd be not that far from retirement. And if I retired after 20, but I'm the type of person that if you just give me a chance to get my foot in the door, I'd be willing to work hard and zigzag around. So I think that, again, the veteran needs to be able to articulate that a little bit better, as well as market their resume and skills appropriately in comparison to the job they're pursuing. But also, I think there's a huge educational opportunity inside our companies to help hiring managers realize, what it is that these veterans do bring to the table. Now, the other thing that I'll say is sometimes, there's basic qualifications, but then there's preferred skill set. And I think sometimes, maybe those of us in human resources or those of us who know how to hire vets well, I think there's an opportunity to educate that manager or have a conversation with that manager to say, how badly do you really need these extra things, these preferred quals? Or what if you got a candidate that met these basic quals and could pick these other things up so quickly? And I think that's where the consultation comes into play. And I hope that helps out.
No, I agree with Matt. To answer the question there, here we try to educate our hiring managers that, is there really such thing as somebody that's overqualified? And so, I think the biggest issue is that when we have people that are, that have a lot of qualifications and they're going into a particular position that might be below what their skill set is, how long will they actually stay in that job? Will they have time to grow with the company before they decide to move other places within the company? And that's some of the things that they look at. For example, when a manager is hiring a candidate, they want to be able to train, they want to be able to implement them in the team, and if they're going to leave in 12 months, that leaves another empty hole in their organization that just has to be refilled again. However, when we come across the skill set, I always present resumes, whether they perceive it to be overqualified or not. Once again, I'm one of those recruiters that do not particularly believe in overqualification. However, presenting the best candidate. When and this is where sometimes candidates may or may not over embellish on their resumes, and I really recommend that they do a little research on the job before they start updating their resume and making sure it's specific to that job. Do a little research. Does this, if they are, I'll give you an example. If the job is asking for PeopleSoft skills, in the military, especially the Navy, they do use a PeopleSoft background. So the program called NSIPS is actually backboned by PeopleSoft. And to be able to put that in their resume and say, I've used this program, which is equivalent to, that lets the manager know, okay, well, they have the skill set, so let's look at them. But however, if that's not pointed out, there might be a communication problem. Or if they've they were enlisted E6 and they directed 200 people and they're applying for a system operator job, well, that might be a problem.
That's great. On that personal branding resume engine, I think you bring up an important point. They need to do their research, and as they build out as they get these drop-down menus, they can tailor it to the industry and some of the things that the specific company they want to work for is asking for. We're doing something very unique with the resume tool. As we worked with the developers, one of my biggest pet peeves with HR systems is a lot of resumes get weeded out because there's no college degree on there. And there's nothing more frustrating than knowing that there are some men and women out there that have gone to school and it probably equals a master's degree because they've sat in a classroom for 22 months as a cryptologist or a signal intelligence operator. Whatever the case may be, we are building in our drop-down menu. It's probably going to cause some shockwaves in the private sector, but for every service member, if they don't have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, we're putting in there that the equivalent of my military service is the equivalent of a college degree, because at the end of the day, or a bachelor's degree, at the end of the day, if a young infantry squad leader's resume is getting weeded out because he doesn't have a college degree, I couldn't live with myself waking up every morning knowing we didn't put that workaround in the system. At least then it forces the resume to be considered by an HR manager. And it's my personal opinion that in 100% of the cases, their 4 years of military service is the equivalent of a degree. It doesn't really matter how you slice it, no matter what they did, that they should be considered for what they did for their country for the 4 years as they got out of high school. we got a question from Stephen as well on Google about what industry would you say is growing the fastest. I think it is by geography. If you look right now at some of the more pressing needs, I'm going to address the question. Energy, healthcare, obviously, is a big industry given all the changes in law and the need for practitioners across that space. Information technology, I think if you look across American business, you have to have some technical skill sets, information technology skills, almost as a common. So I think that IT skills are important to a lot of different companies. Transportation and infrastructure, we have a need in America to rebuild our roads and our bridges, and there's honorable work in the construction trade, drivers, mechanics in the transportation sector. And then if you look at manufacturing, I think there's a huge need, just like there was at the end of World War II, and we have an opportunity to infuse our economy with this talent pool represented by veterans and military spouses. I'm going to wrap it up there. I encourage the younger veterans who are asking that question about what industries are growing to check out our fast track map, because again, if you go to a specific city in Louisiana, it might be energy, but if you go to a place like Orlando, it might be tourism. So you gotta think first about where you want to go and where the jobs are in terms of the job growth markets, and then who's hiring. I want to thank our panelists, Dave and Matt, for joining. Again, it's nice to have two veterans join us on the panel. It's always nice to be joined by another Marine, and we'll let the Navy go and join us once in a while too.
I was a corpsman at one time.
Oh, you were? All right. Well, you're just about a Marine. You are a Marine if you're a corpsman.
I was stationed with him.
Thanks, both of you, for your service. And thanks to all the veterans who joined. If you have follow-up questions, post them on Career Connections track or right there in YouTube. We're going to see a lot of people come and go to this site. I appreciate Dave and Matt joining us today. I think it's a really valuable resource for the veterans who are out there. Thanks again. We'll talk